All right, so I want to go back to the enterprise versus large enterprise versus commercial. You mentioned like the
Yep.
okay. So like when you were interviewing, there were two roles. How did you
Mhm.
specify which role you wanted?
So Zscaler, the recruiter, Tommy Oren, reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, we got these two roles open in Chicagoland. I'd love to talk to you about them." I said, "Okay, fine." Like I was perfectly happy at Gigamon. Like I said, loved Gigamon too. Like I've loved everywhere that I've worked. I've been lucky enough to be able to choose where I've wanted to go. Even in that instance where I got let go, I still had like a couple of job offers there. And so I was talking to Tommy, and he was like, "Hey, we've got a job in large enterprise. I think you'd be fantastic for it." And I was like, "All right, well, tell me more about the job duties. Tell me more about the customers, more importantly, that the large enterprise is selling to." And so he told me, he's like, "Hey, it's the larger like companies. Think of them as like the Fortune 500. They're going to be at that time. I think it was users more than 8,000. So it was like large companies. And I said, "All right, well, tell me about the enterprise." And that's when he told me that one at the time was 2,000 to 8,000 or whatever it was. And I said, "I think that's more my speed again, because that's what I enjoy doing. I enjoy putting those puzzle pieces together." So, yeah, I mean, that's basically how I just found out, was doing my due diligence, was just asking the question. And it's the one that we forget to ask as SEs to our customers is why or what? Like, tell me more, expound on that. And I was just telling one of our new hires, who's my SE buddy, um, that's like the number one thing to remember in the back of your head. Always ask why. Like, customers are going to say something, not, don't be afraid to either be silent and let them continue talking, or to just ask why. Why do you need that? Or why do you think you need that? Or why do you want that? Or why did you come to that conclusion?
That's so interesting because I talk to people, I help them with interviews, and I ask them to ask the question like, why are you looking to hire? And they said, like, well, they need an SE. Like, yeah, but why do they need an SE? Are they backfilling for someone? Do they need to backfill it? Mainly because if they're trying, like, if someone left and they're trying to backfill that
Mhm.
position, but what if they don't really need that? Who's the
Yep.
first person to go if they just because they have a headcount, we're hiring someone and there is no need? Or why are you trying to hire now? Like, can you
Yep.
wait for a few months, or why didn't you hire earlier? Why did that person leave if you're trying to backfill? We don't ask these questions. I've talked to many SEs or many people who want to become SEs, and they're afraid to ask the why questions because they don't want to be insulting or anything like that. But I mean, you're doing a discovery at that point. But yeah, I like that. All right, so one thing I noticed about like large enterprises, you mentioned that they already done their research. I've also noticed that a lot of them already have the product that you're trying to sell them. Do you have the same thing with enterprise where they already have the product and you're just trying to upsell them or provide them with a new feature to solve some other problem?
We do ish. So Zscaler was a really interesting company, as far as I understand it, and in my research. I've been here for about 16 months. But what Jay Chowdhury, who founded the company and is still our CEO, did was he went to the larger companies first and then snowballed downhill, instead of going to the smaller companies and then working his way uphill and trying to scale.
Okay.
And so it's one of the great things that we have when we go to our enterprise customers. They go, "Well, we have 5,000 users. Like, are you going to be able to support us with SSL inspection for all 5,000 users? Like, how can you possibly do that?"
Yeah.
And, when you tell that story of, well, we started at the top and now we've rolled backwards, like enterprise is a new segment here as of like 2 or 3 years ago. So it's interesting to see that, how we're able to snowball backwards and walk into customers and talk about that. But to your question of, are most of our customers or our prospects versus customers, like who are we calling on? It's a healthy mix. I think each rep has somewhere between like 8 and 10 existing customers, and then 20 to 40 prospects that they're reaching out to.
Okay.
And it's your best business does come from your existing customers if they love the product, which most of
Yeah.
ours do, thankfully. Because it's easy to go on there and say, "Hey, you've had a great experience with us for this solution. What about this other solution that we sell?" And they already know you, they already feel comfortable with you, they feel comfortable with how to use your solution. So it's a lot easier than going into somewhere new and explaining something completely new to them of, "Hey, you've been doing Cisco for 20 years. Now you need to learn XOS, completely new operating system. Because why? X, Y, and Z. Like, these are our great features. This is what we can do. Here's the ROI." But at the end of the day, what you're fighting over is familiarity and comfort, right? You can have the greatest features in the world, and it might not get over the hump of familiarity
Yeah.
and comfortability.
Yeah. So, all right, this leads me to the next question, which is, what is your preference, working with existing customers or working with new customers?
Prior to Zscaler, I would say prospects. Like I loved walking to prospects, again, like helping them like view the solution and see it. But I was selling boxes at Gigamon. I was selling boxes at Extreme. I was selling boxes when I was at CDW. And now I'm selling SaaS. And so it's literally revolutionary. Like we are talking about replacing hardware and having them trust the hardware that we host in the cloud. And so again, how do you get over that familiarity and comfortability of, hey, I can see this firewall. I can see this DLP box. If something goes wrong, I can go touch it. I can walk over and touch it and see it's hot.
And shake it really
like,
hard.
Now I'm going to, yeah, exactly. Now I'm going to trust you guys with everything that you said. And I'm sure like our competitors walk in and they have the same problem. Like that is the number one thing that I tell new SEs at Zscaler is what we are fighting is complacency. That is the number one thing that we're against. Once we get them to see our vision, then we're fighting against the Palo Alto Prismas, then we're fighting against the Netscopes, then we're fighting against the Cloudflares. But the largest hurdle that we have to get prospects over is understanding the architecture and understanding why they should go this new cloud route.
So like I talk to salespeople who kind of they could sell to existing customers or they could sell to new customers. And almost everyone prefers selling to existing customers because it's just easier. They don't have to go through the sales cycle of like convincing them. They're already convinced. They just buy a new box. But it seems that it's kind of different in SaaS where it's a different product. It's an add-on product or something like that. But you mentioned something that's very interesting. You transitioned from selling hardware to SaaS. A lot of times I look at job descriptions like we need 5 years of SaaS experience, SaaS selling experience. And in my mind, it's like, all right, what's the big difference? Why is it required to have SaaS sales experience versus sales experience? Can you educate me on the differences between the two and why one would need SaaS experience?
Yeah, I think like you. I don't think you need the experience. And the recruiters out there are going to hate me. The SEMs that are going to look at resumes are going to hate me when they hear this. But my dad always said the worst thing that you can do is not apply or not ask for something, because what's the worst that can happen? They can say no, or they cannot respond. And so I look at job descriptions and I say, hey, and this is like a cultural problem too, that you see, versus men and women. They say, women won't apply unless they meet all of the requirements of a job, and men will still apply. And like, if I like the company and I like the job and I can meet like even 50% of the requirements, I apply. And it's because then I can have that conversation. If they reach out to me, great. And then I can have that conversation. Look, this is what I can bring to the table. I'm eager to learn. Like prior to coming to Zscaler, I didn't have a lot of security knowledge. I chuckled when I left Gigamon because I told my boss Ray that it was his fault that this happened, because Gigamon has a product, Threat Insight, which was my introduction to security. And I guess this is like a common thing in the security world is like you get an ounce of security knowledge in your head and you just fall in love with security. And that's exactly what happened. And so getting back to your question of, what's the difference between SaaS versus hardware? The difference is the fact that you are selling something that's not tangible, they can't really touch, that they can't see, that they have to trust. And especially for us, where we are replacing hardware, I'd imagine it's different for when you're talking about, traditional software as a service rather than solution as a service. That one might be a little bit easier to like talk about and say, hey, I sold that. But at the end of the day, like, especially as an SE, you're selling a solution, whether that's hardware, or whether that's software, whether you can see it or you can't see it. Like, as long as you can articulate that you go in there and you sell solutions to customers, it shouldn't matter. Like, that experience should be moot, whether you're selling hardware or software.